Good evening and welcome to Talking Sports with Evan. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It's a Thursday edition of Talking Sports with Evan. You can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are found. The podcast version will be published tomorrow morning. Otherwise, you can find the video each and every week and each and every show on YouTube and Facebook at Talking Sports with Evan. You can also find it here on X at Evan with Sports. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for checking me out. I appreciate it. If you are not following me on X or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube already, please feel free to do so. Hit the follow button and let me know where you're watching the show from. You can also email the show, Talking Sports with Evan at gmail.com. If you have any comments, any questions you want to have, or any opinion you want to get out, another way to get through to me. And you can also just comment during the show, and I will address any comments that pop up during the show. Lots to discuss from this time last week. Last week, we were talking about the Packers losing to the Eagles in Brazil and NFL Week 1. I didn't get a chance to really talk any Milwaukee Brewers. We'll talk Milwaukee Brewers the start of the show, actually. Once I get through this little introduction setting up the show, we'll talk Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers clinched the National League Central yesterday with a Cubs loss, and then the Brewers went out and beat the Phillies in walk-off fashion 2-1 to make an even bigger party at American Family Field following the win, as the Milwaukee Brewers celebrated their division championship in style because, like I said, they clinched the division and then got the victory as well. So I'm going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers, where they go from here. We have about 2 weeks, about a week and a half, left of the season. A week from Sunday is the last game of the year against the Mets, and then it's playoff time. And right now, if the playoffs were to start as it currently is set up, the Brewers would be playing October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at American Family Field. The question is who? Right now, it's the Mets, but it can be a matter of other teams. So I'm going to talk about the Brewers and my thoughts on them getting here and how far I feel they can go. Following that, going to talk the Packers beating the Indianapolis Colts. Well, let me rephrase that. The Packers running over, through, and around the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday. Got a nice little victory against the Colts and beating them 16-10. Going to talk about that win and talk about Week 3 coming up against the Tennessee Titans, and if I think that we're going to see some Jordan Love, and I guess why I'm still kind of 50-50 on the matter. And then going to go through every game from Week 2, and I'm going to give a couple thoughts on each team and how the week went. So, again, this is Talking Sports with Evan. Thank you for tuning into the show. And I'm going to start off right away talking Milwaukee Brewers. The Milwaukee Brewers currently sit 3rd in the National League, winning the National League Central. They're currently 88-64. They're currently losing 3-0 against the Diamondbacks. And as I said, if the playoffs were to start today, you have the Diamondbacks and the Mets tied at 84-64, but the Diamondbacks do have the tiebreaker, so the Brewers will be playing the Mets at American Family Field for the wild card round of the playoffs. And I got to tip my hat to the Brewers. I really do. I've been really high on the Brewers all season long. I'm going to put that out there first. I've been high on the Brewers all season long. I thought that they could do some damage. And most of the pundits, most of the quote-unquote experts had the Brewers finishing 3rd or 4th or even 5th in the National League Central and winning around 78 games. And I did say right before game number 1 of the season that I thought 78 was fair based off the makeup of the team. However, I did say if the young players were to come together and grow and grow quickly, and then you had Christian Yelich in there as well, I thought the Brewers could win the division because you had the Pirates, who are the Pirates. The Cubs didn't really have, I felt, much to challenge for the division. The Cardinals were old, and the Reds were lacking talent. And Yelich, unfortunately, well, he had a stretch of the season where he was MVP form, but he unfortunately had to have season-ending back surgery, and he's done for the year. But Jackson Chourio has had a huge rookie year, and I found this thing. So preseason Brewer standings predictions. Las Vegas put him fourth. ESPN put him fourth. The Athletic put him second. Fox Sports put him fifth. Fangraphs put him fourth. Petco put him third. CBS Sports put him fifth, and The Ringer put him fourth. And I would say when the season started, with all the unknowns on the team, with how young they were, I feel that those predictions were fair. However, I thought that they stood a better chance in the division than all these outlets felt. The Brewers clinched the division on September 19th, and like I said, we still have about a week and a half left of the season. The first team to clinch a playoff berth, the first team to clinch the division, and I just got to tip my hats to them and Pat Murphy. I personally felt Pat Murphy was the perfect manager for this team. When they were looking for a new manager, I liked Kratz, who the Guardians hired. That was my top choice. Guardians got him first. Pat Murphy was my second preferred choice. And I felt Pat Murphy would be good for this team because of the young talent that they did have. Your Sal Frelick, your Bryce Terang, your Joey Ortiz, your Jackson Chourio, your Blake Perkins. I felt that he would be good for those young guys because he's a former college coach, a former college manager. And I felt that would be appropriate for a number of the young guys you had, and sure enough, it is. And I think Chris Hook, the pitching coach, deserves a hell of a lot of credit, too, for where this team is right now. Chris Hook, the pitching coach, has gotten pitcher after pitcher after pitcher seemingly right. This year, they had Wade Miley. He got hurt. Robert Gasser had a couple good starts. He got hurt. And you had your starting rotation of Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray, Tobias Myers. You had Bryce Wilson in the starting rotation at one point, Joe Ross in the starting rotation at one point, now both in the bullpen. And during the year, you get Frankie Montas and Aaron Savelli. And Montas, during his time with the Brewers, is currently 3-3 with a 3.55 ERA and 9 starts. And Aaron Savelli is 5-2 with a 3.68 ERA in 12 starts. Very good, efficient job by those two not quite trade deadline additions, but I guess close enough. You have Jared Koenig, bullpen guy, seemingly comes out of nowhere, and he's dominating. Brian Hudson, the Dodgers decide we don't have room for him, so we're going to let him go. His time in Milwaukee, he's 6-1 in 43 games with a 1.73 ERA. Tobias Myers, who came to the major league roster, got sent back to AAA, came back, and he's currently 8-5 with a 3.05 ERA in 24 starts, 25 games overall. And the Brewers got to the point they're at, as I mentioned, Wade Milner on the IL. Not Hobie Miller, I'm sorry. Wade Miley on the IL. Hobie Miller pitching ineffective. Robert Gasser on the IL. They haven't had Brendan Woodworth, all season long due to injury. Freddie Peralta has been inconsistent at times. They've done all this in that situation. Oh, and Devin Williams, he didn't pitch till after the All-Star break. So they went the entire first half without their all-star closer, probably the best closer in all of Major League Baseball. And they did all of that in those circumstances. On the offensive side, which the Brewers have one of the top offenses in baseball, very shocking. I know. I'm a little surprised at that too. Willie Adames leads the team with 32 home runs and 109 RBIs. He's batting .248 and the .329 on base. Rhys Hoskins, the big free agent signing for them, DH first baseman, he's sitting there at 25 home runs. William Contreras, who they got basically for nothing. They got involved in a trade involving the Athletics and the Atlanta Braves, and they're like, we'll take William Contreras, and they got him. He's batting .280 on the year with 22 home runs and 90 RBIs. Jake Bauers has 11 home runs. Christian Yelich, before his injury, was batting .315 at the time, leading Major League Baseball in batting average with 11 home runs, 42 RBIs, and he had to have the back surgery. And 20-year-old Jackson Chourio, 21 home runs, 77 RBIs, .272 batting average, .326 on base, .473 slugging, .799 OPS. And I think on June 5th, he was like .212 or less. I can't remember the exact numbers, but beginning part of June, it did not look good for the young 20-year-old. Something's clicked, and he's a superstar in the making. Bryce Terang had a hot first half, struggled a little bit with the bat in the second half, but his glove is still golden. And Joey Ortiz, same thing, hot start, and he's kind of struggled a little bit in the second half, but his bat's starting to get going a little bit again. It's very impressive with what the Brewers are doing. To me, it's very, very impressive. You've had a lot of guys up and down in the big league level and back. You've had a lot of pitchers back and forth. You've had a bunch of injuries, and the Brewers are sitting here, National League Central champions, waiting to get the playoff, finish out the regular season, and get the playoffs started. Now the question is, how far do the Brewers go? So as I stated, if the playoffs started today, the Brewers would be playing the New York Mets for a best-of-3 at American Family Field. The wild card round, it wasn't very friendly to us last year. The Mets are kind of red hot right now. They have won 3 in a row, 6-4 in their last 10. They seem to be heating up. The Padres are 6-4 in their last 10. The Diamondbacks are 5-5. The Brewers took 2 of 3 against the Diamondbacks. More than likely, the Brewers are going to get the Diamondbacks, the Mets, or the Atlanta Braves. That's likely who the Brewers are getting. The Braves are ravaged by injuries. The Mets had a slow start to the year and have really picked it up as of late. As I said, the Diamondbacks and the Padres are red hot. But here's the thing. The Brewers have a bigger picture idea. The Dodgers sitting at 90-62 coming into tonight. Brewers at 88-64. With tiebreaker, the Brewers are 3 games behind the Dodgers. They need to catch the Dodgers. They're 3 games behind with basically a week and a half yet. The Brewers are focused on they want a chance at that 2 seed. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's what they want. I think this Brewer team is positioned well to win in the wild card round. I think they're positioned well to beat the Diamondbacks, the Mets, or the Braves. The Cubs still have a outside shot at getting in the wild card. They don't have a shot at the 1 spot anymore, but they do have a spot at the 3. I think the Brewers would be fine against the Cubs. I think they match up well against the Braves and the Mets. The only concern I have with the Mets is the Mets could go 3 left-handed starting pitchers in that best-of-3 against the Brewers, depending on how that starting rotation matches up. The Braves have a dominant left-hander in Sale. So those would be my biggest concern with those 2 teams. But I think the Brewers are better positioned this year to win the first round for sure and get to the divisional round. The question is, in the divisional round, you're going to be going into a best-of-5. If likely more than likely against the Phillies. They are 91-61, a game above, or technically 2 games ahead of the Dodgers. The Phillies, beating the Phillies in a best of 5 is going to be extremely difficult. The Phillies won the season series. The Brewers won 2 of 3 here in Milwaukee. They lost all 3 in Philly. They lost 1 in Milwaukee. So the Phillies are 4-2 against the Brewers during the season. So the Phillies would be a tough matchup. When we've seen the Brewers play the Phillies 6 times, and like I said, the Phillies have won 4 of those games. But if you're watching live, if you're going to be listening late tomorrow to the podcast, if you're going to be watching later, if you're a Milwaukee Brewer fan, who would you rather have them face in the first round of the playoffs? The Arizona Diamondbacks, the New York Mets, or the Atlanta Braves? Who would you rather have them face? That's my question for you. You can also email this show, talkingsportswithevan@gmail.com. I got the email back up and running. So you're welcome to email the show as well. Would love to get your thoughts on that and see what you have to say regarding the 2024 NL Central champions. I think the division round is probably where I'm going to cap the Brewers. I would love to be wrong. I'll be ecstatic if they get to the NLDS, and I'll be even more ecstatic if they get to the World Series. Because hey, I would love the Brewers to be playing around my birthday, which is the end of October. If the Brewers are still playing around my birthday, that means they're in the World Series. So I would love to see that. So who would you rather have the Milwaukee Brewers face in the playoffs in the wild card round? The Diamondbacks, the Mets, or the Braves? And I guess the Cubs you can throw in there for now. But the Cubs are in a tough spot right now, I guess is the nice way to say it. They're in a tough spot right now. So this is Talking Sports with Evan. I want to thank you all for watching today's show. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in live to listening to the podcast later. Just make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you can find it on Substack, anywhere podcasts are found. And like I said, I appreciate you all tuning into the show. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers defeated the Indianapolis Colts 16-10, and there's a lot of storylines. I know 16-10 is hard to believe, but there are a lot of storylines to peel and talk about in this win. As I said last week, I didn't think Love was going to play. I didn't think they would. I think they knew he wasn't going to play, as much as they say they didn't know until Saturday, really, that he wasn't. Saturday, they downgraded him to doubtful. Sunday, they did not activate him. Saturday, they also brought up Sean Clifford for his first activation from the practice squad. So the fact they brought up Clifford, the fact they downgraded him to doubtful, you kind of knew he wasn't going to play. But I got to tip my hat to Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur is a very good football coach. There's just no other way to put it. Matt LaFleur is a very good football coach. He put together a perfect game plan to attack the Colts. The Colts, not a good team against the run. Everybody saw what the Texans did in week 1 with Joe Mixon. I talked about last week, too, that in order to beat the Colts, you're going to have to lean very heavy on the ground game, and that's just what they did. Josh Jacobs, belt cow, 32 carries for 151 yards. Jaden Reed, 2 for 37. Marshawn Lloyd, who's now on the IL, 6 for 15. Emmanuel Wilson, 5 for 9. Bo Melton, 2 for 8. And his first run went for a ton of yards. He lost a bunch of yards on the second one, but Milton did a good job. And Willis showed his ability on the ground, 6 carries for 41 yards, one that set them up inside the 5-yard line. Matt LaFleur called a perfect game. He knew his quarterback's limitations, the combination of just his physical limitations, and then the fact that he had only been here for a couple weeks. He was here a week before the game down in Brazil. And he was very efficient. He went 12 of 14, 122 yards, a touchdown pass to Jaden Reed on a night. I'm sorry, Dontavian Wicks on a nice comeback route where he turned upfield and got in. They didn't ask Malik Willis to do too much. They just asked him to take what the defense gives you and trust in yourself, trust in your legs, and Malik Willis was able to, and they were able to get the win over the Colts, which was the offense struggled a little bit in the second half, so obviously the Colts started to catch on to what the Packers are doing, but it still didn't matter because the Packers ran for over 200 yards on the ground, led by Josh Jacobs. Now you hope against the Titans, you don't have, with or without Willis, you don't have to rely on Jacobs to have to go 32 carries. You hope that Emmanuel Wilson can pick up the slack a little bit better and get more than 5 carries. I know the 1.8 yards per carry for Emmanuel Wilson and the 2.5 for Marshawn Lloyd aren't the best sounding, but I think a lot of those carries came when the Colts were selling out to stop the run. The other storyline in this game, defensively, Packers had 3 interceptions. Richardson went 17 of 34 for 204 and was only able to run for 37 yards on 4 carries. And a couple of those, a lot of those 37 yards came late in the game when it was kind of garbage time and the Colts were trying to catch up a little bit. I think overall, defensively, the Packers did great. They had the 3 interceptions. McKinney had one. Wilson had one. Evan Williams had one. Quay Walker should have had one. Hit him right in the face mask. He didn't get his hands up quite quick enough to catch it, unfortunately. But I think overall, the Packers played a great game defensively. Now, they basically were like, you know what? You're going to run Jonathan Taylor? Fine. He had 12 carries for 103. Didn't have a touch at all in the second carry. I mean, in the fourth quarter, I'm sorry. He didn't have a touch at all in the fourth quarter, which is very baffling to me. I don't know why he didn't play it down in the fourth quarter, but the way he was running, they probably should have continued to run him a little bit. But I think that's the biggest concern. I don't know if concern's the right word. That's the biggest question mark I have currently about this Green Bay Packer defense is the ability to stop the run. And I know with Barkley and now Taylor, those are you're playing against 2 of the best running backs in the NFL back to back like that. It's going to be hard to stop the run. And unfortunately for the Packers, it was, and it was for a number of reasons. Quay Walker needs to do better, needs to take better angles, needs to take more worry about taking proper angles and trying to rely on his speed. I've been a fan of Quay Walker, but I'm going to tell it like it is if he's not up to par, and he has not had a very good 2 games. He's had nice moments. He put the pressure on Richardson to force that first interception. But if he's going to be a middle linebacker in the NFL, he needs to do more. He needs to do more. He needs to make plays and use his athleticism to get in that hole and stop the run. He seems tentative at times, and he took a bad angle on Jonathan Taylor, which Taylor had a nice run. He came in out of control on a tackle on Jonathan Taylor, which Taylor is able to go through that tackle on a screen pass. I think it was the Colts' second possession. These are plays he has to clean up. He's a third-year linebacker in the NFL. I don't think it's unfair to demand better. I know Jeff Hafley's a big fan of him, but I don't think it's unfair to say that we need to see better from Quay Walker. This is his 3rd year in the league. Other positives, Wyatt, third-year defensive tackle. He played his butt off. He had a sack in the game, a couple of pressures there. Jair Alexander had a pretty good game in coverage, nice rebound from week one. Bullard continuing to get better each and every week. Kenny Clark had a much better game after week one. The other thing I hope to see against Tennessee this week, which we have not seen in the first 2 weeks, and part of that could be scheme specific. It's some red flags, but getting pressure on the quarterback. Rashawn Gary, I'm looking for his name on the box score. And guess what? No Rashawn Gary listed in the box score at all. Preston Smith had a tackle and a assisted tackle. Lucas Van Ness had a tackle. Kenny Clark had 2 tackles and an assisted tackle. So I just need to see better. I need to see a better pass rush, and I guess we'll see truly if the pass rush is going to be a problem or not against Tennessee, because Tennessee, especially at right tackle, gives up a ton of pressure on the quarterback. And I guess this is a perfect segue to the Tennessee Titan game coming up in Nashville on Sunday. The Titans are much better against the run. They have 2 very good defensive tackles, so you're not going to be able to run up the middle as well as you did, regardless of who's quarterback. But they also, on the offensive side, Will Levis has been bad. He's had 2 consecutive weeks where he's had a play where you just want to put your head through a wall. He had a ridiculous pick-6 interception against Chicago, and he had a ridiculous fumble against the Jets. And you can probably say both of those turnovers cost the Titans 2 wins. They ended up being losses. They've lost 2 games in a row, 24-17, and the play of the quarterback is a big reason why. And it's not all him. Pressure's getting to him. There's been the pass rush from the Bears and the pass rush from the Jets got to him quite a bit. So obviously he had to make he was trying to do too much, and hopefully he tries to do too much on Sunday. I think the Packers are going to win the game with or without Jordan Love. It's going to be a tougher matchup than the Colts just because defensively they're better against the run than the Colts are. But I think the Packers win with or without Love. I think the pass rush is going to force some turnovers because we can finally unleash the pass rush. But I will say this. Next week, if I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the box score and obviously watching the game and looking at the box score, and I see Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Kenny Clark, non-existent at times again, I'm going to start having some concerns. I will buy the coaches speak about it was their scheme they were running is what prevented those guys from having big numbers the last, first 2 weeks of the year. Rashawn Gary had a sack in week 1 that apparently nobody's fault. They said the right tackle for the Eagles in that game gave up no pressures and no sacks. So apparently Rashawn Gary, nobody gets any blame for that sack, I guess. I don't know. But the keys for the Packer victory, with or without Jordan Love, is going to be stop the run, force the young quarterback to have to throw the football, pressure him into making mistakes. He's shown 2 weeks in a row that he's prone to making mistakes. Force him into one of those stupid, idiotic decisions that we've seen the last 2 weeks. Offensively, need to figure out a way to run the football against a pretty stout front, and you're going to have to make some plays in the passing game. If it's Jordan Love playing, it's going to be a lot easier to make plays in the passing game. If it's Malik Willis, I don't know how efficient the passing game is going to be. If it's Malik Willis, Matt LaFleur is going to have to coach the game of his life for 2 weeks in a row to help Malik Willis have a strong game. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think the Packers win if Jordan Love plays. I think it'll be a 31-17 type ball game. If Jordan Love doesn't play, it's going to be a 16-10, 17-14, 19-17 type game on Sunday if Jordan Love doesn't play. And I guess the $1 million question, does Jordan Love play? He practiced 2 days in a row, so I don't know. I think it's a good sign that he could play, but so he practiced yesterday. It was shorts yesterday, had a brace and a sleeve on, and we don't really know what he did outside of the open part of practice to the media. We don't know what he did on the closed portion of practice. The important thing was he was able to return to practice today, because the question is going to be if he's going to be able to play or not. The question is, how does the knee respond the next day? How does the sprained MCL respond the next day? Is there swelling in the knee? Is the swelling back? Is it sore? Is it hurting? That's going to be the $1 million question. But at the same time, if Jordan Love does not practice tomorrow, it's not the end of the world. Now, if he does, that's a great sign that he's likely going to play on Sunday. But if he doesn't, don't read too much into it. It could be that, hey, we saw him for 2 days in a row. We're going to give him some rest, and we're going to get back to it on Friday. From what the Packers and Jordan Love said, they're going to give him the pretty much 12 o'clock kickoff on Sunday to figure out if he's able to play or not. And I know the national media has been hell-bent on that 3 to 6, closer to 6 week regard, but the Packers have been very consistent on their timeline that it's going to be sooner than people think. With the severity of the injury. The big thing is can Jordan Love protect himself? By him being on the field, is it going to cause further injury? And can he protect himself? If it can potentially cause further injury, putting him out there this soon, then you don't play him. If Jordan Love is unable to protect himself, you don't play him. It's really that simple. I'm about, I would say 60-40 that he plays right now. I think him being out there in pads, practicing second day in a row is very promising. But if we don't see Jordan Love this Sunday, then I'm fairly positive we're going to see him against the Vikings in week 4. I'm pretty positive then if we don't see him this week. So, again, Talking Sports with Evan at gmail.com. Find it on YouTube and Facebook, Talking Sports with Evan, and right on X at Evan with Sports. Going to the NFL in general, some games that stood out, starting with last Thursday night's game between Buffalo and Miami. First of all, Tua, you got to do what's best for you, man. If you're going to come back, you're on the IR. But if you're going to come back and play this season, you have to learn how to protect yourself. Trying to run through a safety is absolutely stupid. You have to learn how to protect yourself if you're going to be back on that field. Slide, step out of bounds, figure out how you can protect yourself better. And I know Buffalo beat Miami 31-10, but Josh Allen, for as good as Josh Allen is, the people that deserve most of the credit for that is the defense of the Dolphins. They forced 3 turnovers. They had a pick 6. They deserve the credit. The Bills defense played outstanding football with their new defensive coordinator against the Dolphins. Even before Tua got hurt, they were turning up the pressure. Dallas and New Orleans. First of all, New Orleans has been very impressive. And I think my overreaction to week 2 action is, are the New Orleans Saints the best team in football right now? 44-19 victory over the Cowboys. They completely destroyed their week 1 opponent. Alvin Kamara looks like he found the fountain of youth, had 3 touchdowns, had a 5-yard touchdown run, had a 57-yard touchdown pass, 12-yard touchdown run, and a 7-yard touchdown. So he had a total of 4 touchdowns in the game. And, Shaheed, 4 catches for 96 yards. The Saints offense looks like a well-oiled machine right now, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens in week 3. For the Cowboys, Mike Zimmer, not really been the change that people were thinking. Kamara ran all over them. They struggled in week 1. I know they got the win, but they struggled at times in week 1. Mike Zimmer has definitely not been the answer through 2 weeks. I think that's a safe bet to say. Tampa Bay and Detroit. Now, this is a game I predicted. I predicted Tampa Bay to beat Detroit. Why? Just a hunch. And what ends up happening, my hunch turns out to be true. Baker Mayfield played an extremely efficient 12 of 19 for 185 yards passing, 5 for 34 on the ground, and good Godwin, 7 for 117. And the Tampa Bay's defense was very good in forcing 2 turnovers. The issue I had with Detroit, Jared Goff threw the ball 55 times. Detroit, I know, was playing from behind, but they threw the ball 55 times in the game. You have a running back that you took in the first round in Gibbs, 13 carries for 84 yards, and you have David Montgomery, 11 carries for 35 yards. Total, 27 carries for 139 yards. You threw the ball a total of 56 times because, hey, your punter threw the ball too. Maybe try to utilize your first round draft choice running back, 7 carries for 22 yards as well. Maybe try to utilize your first round pick running back in Gibbs. Lean on him a little bit. There's no reason that Jared Goff has to throw the ball 55 times. Just doesn't make any sense to me. We already talked Green Bay and Indy, Tennessee and the Jets. I'm going to start with the Titans again because I guess I like picking on them. Will Levis, I don't know what to say. 2 extremely stupid plays back-to-back weeks. A pick 6 and a ridiculous fumble when you have the ball in the frickin' red zone and you turn it over stupidly. Take the sack. Kick the field goal on 4th down and give your team a chance. Not that hard. And the Jets, hey, Wisconsin's very own Braylon Allen, 20-yard touchdown run in the 4th quarter of that game, and a 12-yard touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers in the 2nd quarter. So tip your hat to Braylon Allen, the youngest player in NFL history to score a touchdown, I guess. So you'd love to see it. And Braylon Allen looks a lot more explosive than he ever did in Wisconsin. And maybe it's because he's finally healthy, but I do love to see Fond du Lac's own Braylon Allen. Minnesota and San Francisco. Minnesota did just enough to win. Minnesota looks like they're going to be a problem. They're not going to light the world on fire, but they're going to make you fight and earn everything that you get. Brock Purdy had 36 passing attempts at 319 yards. They made him earn it. Mason, 20 carries for 100 yards. Again, they made him earn it. And then Deebo Samuel gets hurt in the game. The Vikings look like a team that is going to make you have to fight, crawl, claw, and scratch your way for everything you're going to get on the field. And San Francisco, no Christian McCaffrey, no Deebo Samuel. Brock Purdy, let's see what you got. 49er fans get mad when they call you a game manager. Well, you're going to have to be you're going to have to be just above a game manager if you want to win these games without McCaffrey or Deebo Samuel. You have Asante Samuel and a bunch of guys at this point. So Brock, can you lift up the talent around you and play better? Can you lead the 49ers to victory instead of being a quote-unquote game manager? Patriots, Seattle. Seattle won 23-20. Geno Smith had a great game. 33 of 44 for 327 and a touchdown. They had to rely on the passing game more with Walker out. The Patriots also have a pretty good run defense, and Geno Smith was up for the task, and DK Metcalf, 10 catches for 129 yards, was as well. The Patriots have a very strong defense, but they don't have much of a offensive line, and their offense is a work in progress. That's probably the best I can say for them. The Washington Commanders beat the New York Football Giants 21-18. Battle of the bad teams. Daniel Jones had an efficient game. Daniels had an efficient game as well. The running game is really where the Commanders won it. Robinson won 17 carries, 133 yards, and Singletary 16 carries for 95 yards. That's really, and then the Giants had a turnover as well. So that's really what Washington run it. The Giants defense struggled. They gave up 425 yards of offense. The Commanders only gave up 304. Time of possession favored the Commanders 37.5 minutes to 22.5 minutes. The Commanders are just a better football team right now than the New York Football Giants, and I'm thinking things are going to get worse in New York before they get better. The Chargers beat the Panthers 26-3. Herbert, unfortunately, though, is up in the air if he's going to play or not this week with an ankle leg issue. I hope he can play. I like the Chargers. I think they have a solid squad, and now they're well coached for a change. But it seems like every year the Chargers get hit hard by injuries. And for the Carolina Panthers, they're the news this week because Andy Dalton is now the starting quarterback for the Panthers instead of Bryce Young. And shouldn't have drafted Bryce Young at number 1 overall to begin with. Should have took C.J. Stroud, personally, at number 1. That's what you should have done. You took Bryce Young. So if you're taking a quarterback, and if you're taking a QB, number 1 overall, you're taking a quarterback that can lift guys up. Bryce Young, to me, has never shown that he can lift guys up. He played at a loaded squad in Alabama. He didn't have to, quote, lift guys up. He had guys he could depend on and get the ball to. Carolina doesn't have a good squad on Bryce Young. You've done a poor job at building your roster, and you've done a poor job developing and protecting your quarterback. And now you have Andy Dalton, who might win just enough games to prevent you from having a top 5 pick again. Bad teams stay bad for a reason, and one of them is that they got bad roster management. And I know one of the big reasons why their roster management isn't good is they have a GM that likes to stay involved. Cleveland 18, Jacksonville 13. Deshaun Watson better than week 1, but ultimately the Browns are able to hold off the Jaguars. I think it's the best way to put it. They're able to hold them off and get this win. They ran for 125 on the ground. The offense didn't really do anything too crazy, but they were able to get 4 sacks on Trevor Lawrence and a bunch of tackles for loss and quarterback hits that made things difficult for Trevor Lawrence. And Lawrence 14 of 30 for 220. Got sacked 4 times and no touchdowns, but hey, no interceptions either. So I think Doug Peterson's days are numbered. That's what I'll leave Jacksonville with. I think Doug Peterson's head coaching days are numbered because he's not having the impact in Jacksonville people thought he was going to have. Next game up, Baltimore and the Raiders. And this game surprised me. I figured Baltimore was going to win. They're the better team, but at the end of the day, the Raiders look like the better coached team. They look like they were better coached, better prepared, and they had better fight. It's hard going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and the Raiders were able to do it, and they closed out. The Ravens had 14 second half points. The Raiders scored 7 in the third and 13 in the fourth in order to get this victory. They won it right towards the end of regulation. Again, you have Derrick Henry, 18 carries for 84 yards. Lamar Jackson, 34 attempts. I talked last week how ridiculous it is that Lamar Jackson is throwing the football 30 plus times when you brought Derrick Henry in to be a bell cow. But you gave him 18 carries for 84 yards. And you gave Justice Hill 4 carries for 22 yards. Lamar Jackson had 5 carries for 45 yards. Be a power running team. Be a play action team. Be to your identity. Don't throw the ball 30 to 40 times a game. You're not doing Lamar Jackson any favors being a team that throws the ball like that. Pittsburgh beat Denver 13-6. Pittsburgh, tip your hat to their defense. Their defense seems to be legit with not J.J. Watt. He's retired. His brother, T.J. Watt, they seem to be legit. And your leading passer for the Broncos, and I had the same issue last week. I'm having it again. You have a rookie quarterback, and you're having him throw the ball 35 times, 40-plus times in week 1, 35 times in week 2, and you're only running the ball 19 times. Your leading rusher was your rookie quarterback, 4 carries for 25 yards. Javonte Williams, 11 carries for 17 yards. Tyler Batty, 1 carry for 16, and McLaughlin, 3 carries for 6. And I know Pittsburgh's a tough defense. Pittsburgh has a tough front, but you can't be throwing the ball 35 times with a rookie quarterback that still has a lot to learn if you want to win football games in this level. Kansas City beat Cincinnati 26-25, another close game between those two teams. And I know NFL fans that aren't Chief fans, I get it. It seems like Kansas City gets all the calls. It seems that way. I understand. But the play that set up the game-winning field goal by Kansas City, that was pass interference. Any way you look at it, that was defensive pass interference. He went through the receiver rather than trying to make a play on the ball. I get the defender has every right to going after the football as the offensive guy does, but he played through the receiver and made contact with the receiver well before the ball got there, and that's defensive pass interference, and it was called correctly. There's probably other calls in that game that you could probably point to and be more unhappy about, but the officials got that pass interference at the end of the game correct. But Bengals, you got to score touchdowns. You got to score touchdowns if you want to beat the Chiefs. At the 10:41 mark, you took a 3-0 lead off of a field goal. Then you had a 4-yard touchdown pass in the second quarter. You're up 10-3. The Chiefs tie the game 10-10. You have a chance to go into halftime with a bigger lead, but you have to kick a field goal, a 33-yard field goal after a 9-play drive, and a 48-yard field goal after a 6-play drive. If you score touchdowns on those two possessions, at least one touchdown, you get 2 touchdowns, you're winning the game. You cannot beat Kansas City settling for field goals. You had 1, 2, 3, 4 field goal attempts in this game. 4. if one of those 4 field goal attempts ended up being a touchdown, you win the game, and the Chiefs are having to go for a touchdown instead of a field goal at the end of the game to try to win. You had a 38-yard fumble return. You had a turnover that got you had a 22-17 lead after a missed extra point, and then the Chiefs recovered a turnover and returned a fumble 38 yards to make it 23-22 after their missed extra conversion attempt. You need to score touchdowns. You have to score touchdowns. 33-yard field goal, 22-yard field goal. Those are the two biggest ones that are going to stand out to me because you have to finish those drives, especially a 22-yard field goal. That's an extra point, basically. That means you had the ball in the red zone, deep in the red zone, and you should have scored. Houston beat the Bears 19-13. Houston defense looks very good, and the Bears protect your quarterback better. Find a way to protect Caleb Williams. If you don't have the offensive line to run the offense you want to run right now, find ways to protect Caleb Williams. Because guess what, Chicago? I know it's only 2 games into the season, but you're about to ruin another quarterback because of your inability to properly protect your young quarterback and develop him. And then Monday night, the Falcons beat the Eagles 22-21, and the Eagles are starting the year very Jekyll and Hyde, I guess is the best way to put it. They had a turnover, and they controlled time of possession, but they had a turnover, and Barkley couldn't catch the football on third down that would have basically potentially finished out the game. And Atlanta, give them credit. They fought like hell to win 22-21. They scored 11 points in the fourth quarter to help get them that win. Philadelphia scored 11 points in the fourth quarter. The Falcons scored 7 in the fourth quarter. They had a 6-play, 70-yard drive where they scored a touchdown with 34 seconds to go, a touchdown pass to Drake London to give them the win. But the Eagles, they had their chances too. They had a 29-yard field goal in the third quarter to give them a 10-9 game. Again, you got to score touchdowns in the National Football League, and a 28-yard field goal with 1:39 left to give them a 21-15 lead. Again, you got to score touchdowns in the National Football League if you're going to intend to win football games. So, with that said, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Talking Sports with Evan. I appreciate it. I will be back next week to preview some playoff baseball. Maybe we'll know who the Brewers are going to play. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But we're going to talk about it. And I appreciate you all watching and listening. This has been Talking Sports with Evan. Hope you all have a great